Hey, it's Bill Russell. I'm here in my yellow hat. I wore it at Vive and Hims to signify our partnership with Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation and the search for cures and to combat childhood cancer. I'm just blown away by the generosity of our community. With the help of our partners, Short Test, Rackspace, CTG, and some of you giving individually, we were able to raise close to $40,000 at those two events. It is just exceptional. And I would like to thank all of you who have joined us in this cause. If you would like to be a part of it as well, go ahead and hit our page, thisweekhealth.com. You can go to the top blue banner that is on our homepage and click on that to give today. Thank you again for being a part of this effort and this cause. Today in Health IT, we're going to take a look at a couple of articles of CIOs saying we're going to get back to the basics and what that really means. My name is Bill Russell. I'm a former CIO for a 16 hospital system and creator of This Week Health, a set of channels and events dedicated to transform healthcare one connection at a time. We want to thank our show sponsors who are investing in developing the next generation of health leaders: Short Test, Artisite, Parlance, Certify Health, Notable, and ServiceNow. We appreciate them. They make it possible for us to do so many more things than we would do without them, and we are grateful. Check them out at thisweekhealth.com/today. All right, one last thing. Share this podcast with a friend or colleague. Use it as a foundation for daily or weekly discussions on the topics that are relevant to you and the industry. Great way to mentor the next generation. They can subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, two articles. The first, and actually they're derived from each other. If you don't know how Becker's works, a lot of times Becker's will scour the internet, find things on the internet that were written by CIOs, CEOs, healthcare leaders in general, and then they will summarize those things into an article that they can put out there and generate hits. And so they are summarizing a Forbes article here that Zafa Chaudhry, frequent guest on the show, has written in Forbes. And they also pulled in, let's see, LinkedIn comments from Heather Nelson from Boston Children's. The gist of it is, the title is Health System CIOs Plan to Get Back to Basics in 2024. And it really is spearheaded by Zafa's article that he wrote for Forbes 2024, the year we strengthen our healthcare tech foundations. And his premise here is that during the pandemic, we were scrappy, nimble, innovative. We really threw out a lot of our policies and our standards, and in some cases, price tags. And we mobilized to keep our doors open and our frontline staff protected and communities alive during the global pandemic, which was appropriate and right. But that shattered a series of advancements over the years of really strengthening the core and the foundation of IT. And we did some awkward things, right? So we connected in some things to the EHR. We implemented some telehealth solutions that weren't necessarily all integrated real well and that kind of stuff. And that created a new norm. And he argues that the new norms have shattered what was in existence, and we are likely never to return. Now, I love Zafa, and I think he would go back and forth with me if he were here on the show, and he would be really okay with me going back and forth with him. I would say he's right in certain respects in that we shattered a lot of norms during the pandemic, and it was good. We shattered some norms that needed to be shattered, which is you have to move maniacally slow on projects, and you have to do you have to eliminate all risk before you move forward. And we had those norms in place, and a lot of systems were moving way too slow for what was required for a health system to move into the future. That norm was shattered. And so the expectations for IT were escalated during the pandemic. You can move faster, you can do more, because we did move faster and we did do more. So those norms were shattered, and appropriately. Now, the norms of adhering to the basics, right? The solid fundamentals of a simple architecture is easier to manage and more cost effective to manage than a complex architecture. Fewer applications with platforms are easier and more cost effective to manage than scattered systems across the board. Best of breed oftentimes, most times, predominantly, I'd say 90% of the times, is less effective than platforms that have potentially not as good of solutions. Again, cost, efficiency, sharing of information, moving the information from data to knowledge, all those things benefit from having a simple platform, from keeping an eye on the architecture, keeping an eye on the complexity, keeping an eye on the workflow and the data flow and the end use of that information and how it is applied. All those basics were jettisoned during the pandemic. And he says likely never to return. If they do not return, by the way, and this is why they will return, and they will return quickly. Because if they do not return, we will have a subsequent drastic increase in breaches. We will have more outages. We will have, it's just the law of IT is complexity breeds problems, period. Full stop. Whatever you do to emphasize, complexity breeds problems. And it may not be evident immediately. Like when you take a simple system and you put a CIO in there who doesn't have an eye for architecture, and they then proceed to go all over the place, it doesn't show up immediately. It shows up in the future. After you have this wild CIO who doesn't know what the heck they're doing, allow things to get out of control, what happens is all of a sudden the outages will tick up, the breaches will tick up, the ability to integrate data for a new workflow or to integrate digital tools will become so complex that it will slow the organization down. There are laws that exist in IT. People may or may not recognize these laws. There are great CIOs who do recognize these laws. Zafa is one of those that understands this. BJ Moore, great conversation with him about the basics of IT. Jason Joseph, great conversation with him about the basics of IT. And Brent Lamb, UNC, great conversation about the basics of IT. There's a lot of really good CIOs out there who understand simplicity in architecture, platform thinking. These are the hallmarks of a solid IT organization that is able to continue to be nimble well into the future, continue to be secure, continue to be efficient and effective. So I don't think these norms are going to just evaporate and go away. In fact, there's almost a law of gravity that we will be pulled back to this. Like the more an organization gets away from this, the more crazy things will start to happen. And I tell the story often. I'll just touch on it here for a second. I came into St. Joe's, again, 16 hospital systems, $7.5 billion. You would think the architecture was solid and sound, but I came in following outages of the primary data center over 6 weeks. And when I say outages of the primary data center, I don't mean a system went down. The data center went down 8 times over 6 weeks. That's what happens from neglect over time. There's just gravity will pull you back. That neglect over time caused them to say, hey, you know what? It was great. The path we were on was great. It was fun. It felt good. We could do whatever we wanted. Now we need some discipline. We need structure. We need this thing to stop going down, or we're going to have a revolt on our hands. Same thing was true before Darren Dworkin went into Cedars-Sinai. Massive outages, front page of the LA Times kind of stuff. And he came in there with a disciplined approach and said, we are going to get back to basics, and this is what we're going to do. And you have to establish that foundation. And I think in Darren's case, and in my case as well, and others, you can start to be that innovative CIO once the basics are taken care of. And so I don't share that to say that Zafa is wrong. I say that to say that Zafa is absolutely correct. There will be a pulling back to this that will always happen, will always continue to happen. In fact, there's some great quotes in here. So Daniel Barchi, CIO Common Spirit, in an interview with Becker's Healthcare from November stated, it's important to recognize that more technology is not better. We're not looking for more technology at every turn. What we're trying to see is what are the best tools we can provide our caregivers so that they're able to best serve the needs of our patients. That might mean better data. It might mean better integration of the tools that we have. It might be simplifying the tools we have, better optimizing them for what we need. Another great, BJ Moore, Providence, who I mentioned in his interview on Wall Street Journal from October, said, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The most basic needs have to be met before achieving higher level needs. That gets back to what I was saying before. You build on a solid, simple architecture or platforms, which allows you to do those higher level Maslow kinds of things. In this case, without strong foundation, an organization probably cannot breed technological progress and innovation, he goes on to say. And Sachin Jain also has some quotes in here as well. I really have to commend Zafa. He writes really well. He's well written. I love the fact that he pulled in these other quotes. He is one of the better writers out there in our ranks in articles, and I highly recommend that you follow him for these things. But as we continue to talk about priorities for 2024 and the rise of digital and the rise of experience and the rise of workflow and the rise of artificial intelligence and large language models, it's important never to lose focus on the basics. You have to build on a foundation that is as simple as possible with as few technologies as possible that are as integrated as possible. So as soon as you get outside of that foundation, you are going to be building on a shaky foundation. And when you start to build on a shaky foundation, things will break, and they can break in little ways and they can break in big ways. And so it's always important to come back to the basics, to focus on the basics. And so anytime I'm setting a strategy, a 3-year, 5-year strategy on the IT side, not for the health system, but on the IT side, I am looking to shore up that foundation. Every year, there's progress made towards shoring up the foundation, simplifying, eliminating technologies, rationalizing applications. It's getting back to a core foundation that is strong. Every year, there should be an aspect of your strategy that strengthens the core in some way. And yes, all these other things have to be a part of your strategy as well. How are you going to advance the patient experience? How are you going to advance the use of artificial intelligence and those kind of things? But if you don't have a solid foundation, you're building on sand. And quite frankly, building on sand is fraught with challenges in the long term. Anyway, all right, that's all for today. Don't forget, share this podcast with a friend or colleague, have a discussion about this, see what they think, and go back and forth. And I think we will make a better generation of healthcare leaders if we continue to have these conversations. We want to thank our channel sponsors who are investing in our mission, and that is what they're doing, investing in the future of our healthcare leaders. They are SureTest, Artisight, Parlance, Certify Health, Notable, and ServiceNow. Check them out at thisweekhealth.com/today. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.